Alright, so that's finally on there. And it looks pretty good for cheap powder coat versus actually chroming it.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Rustomod. If you haven't been following along, we are building a 1950 Willys Wagon. And we're not just doing a classic engine swap on this thing, we are doing a full-on chassis swap. We're essentially taking the classic looks of the 1950 Willys Wagon, but modernizing a little bit and putting it onto a Jeep Wrangler chassis. So of course it's not that simple. We had to actually cut the Jeep Wrangler chassis in half and then extend it and then put the body onto that chassis. Then we had to make motor mounts and do everything like that. And we essentially have an old Willys Wagon body on top of a new modern Jeep Wrangler frame. And that's awesome. So we have modern suspension, modern steering, modern axles, disc brakes, everything like that ready to go. But we didn't want to stop there. We're actually engine swapping it as well. We're putting a Volkswagen turbo diesel TDI motor in it, so change it up a little bit, do something a little bit different, but we wanted to keep it automatic. So the trick is to mount the TDI to the 700R4 automatic transmission. That way we can have an overdrive and a lockup converter and stuff like that. That way we can cruise on the highway and stuff, but we still want to use our Volkswagen TDI diesel motor to attach to it. So we had to get an adapter plate, bolt it together, and hopefully this combination works out. So now we got everything in the chassis mounted, plumbed, and ready to go. The next step is to get the body ready to go. So if you talk to anybody that's ever done a build like this, they'll tell you straight up that the last 10% of the build takes 90% of the time. So getting the chassis is really not that difficult and went together pretty quick. So now all the little detail stuff is what takes the most time, but that's what all the stuff of the build really comes together, and it makes it that much cooler of a build. So on the last episode you saw us get a bunch of little stuff done in the engine bay and everything like that. So now we're going to try to wire the entire body before we put it onto our frame. That way we can get to everything in the engine bay, wire everything up, all the little things that we can't get to when there's a motor in there. So now in this episode we're going to try to wire all the stuff we can, so that way we can get this body back onto the frame and then just plug it in and it'll be ready to go.
Alright, so now we're going to start doing the wiring and everything under the hood, so that way we can get that stuff done before we put the body onto the frame, so that way we can get to everything. So I'm going to start by putting in our intercooler, transmission cooler, all the stuff for hopefully the final time, so we can install our wiring harness. This wiring harness is very similar to the one that we put in the C10. Actually, almost had the same fuse block as the one in the C10. It's just kind of a universal harness that is more just for like a universal kit, since they don't really make a Willys Wagon wiring harness. They do, I guess, for like a
Willys,
but
we're adding a Willys in large part.
Yeah,
and they certainly don't make that for a Willys VW, Chevy.
Yeah,
truck. So that's the hard part, is figuring out where everything goes, figuring out your schematic ahead of time. That way you have very little backtracking to do, and you'll have fewer mistakes. Yeah, the wiring harness is just a 21 circuit wiring harness. I found off of Google. If you type it in, it was like $120. It was crazy. And the nice thing about it is all the wires are marked. It's all copper wires, not the aluminum, copper plated. So that's pretty cool. I mean, for the money, you can't buy the wire for that, really.
and I gotta just pull the radiator out, so that way we can start wiring in the front lights and then the headlights and all the other stuff. So we'll start putting that stuff together.
Alright, so if you saw a previous episode, we're actually putting some lights hidden in the grill. So we're just wiring those up and then we can install it.
Alright, so we got the intercooler lights welded up, So we're gonna test them out.
So a little 12-volt battery. We've had these around here, but anyway, they're convenient because you don't have to drag a car battery around or plug something into the wall. But there you go.
Cool.
Here's our front grill lights. All right, hooking a bunch of wires together. So we got 4 lights here that we want to make removable. That if we got a problem with one of them, we can take them out. So we've got the inline spade terminals. But then you got to gang them all up. Typically, you're going to cut a bunch of Ys and a bunch of crimp connectors, and it just becomes very unreliable and very cumbersome. Takes a lot of time. So found these click lock connectors to gang them together. So they're basically all connected. So you can see they come in different widths. This is a 2 conductor. These are 5 conductors. So you got a wire for each of the lights, and then you got your power coming in. So makes it very neat. They're reusable. You just lift the latch up, pop the wire out, and away you go. You can replace it pretty quickly. We had to extend these wires. That's why we added the spade terminals to it. Stick that in, flip that down, and boom. So those are pretty cool. You can find them probably on Amazon. I think that's where I found them.
Alright, so now we got everything wired up. We can go ahead and install the intercooler with all the lights and everything on it. So these will just tuck right behind the grill, and hopefully you won't really notice them whenever you walk up on it, but then it'll have the modern lights that we want, especially off-roading with this thing, and it should function in a really stealthy way. So now that we got that thing put on there, we can go ahead and assemble the rest of the grill. So something that we wanted to do was we wanted to update all the chrome on the car. It had been really pitted and severely rusted and dented, and we wanted to make it look a little bit better, but we didn't want to spend the money to chrome it. So we actually found some powder coat chrome that we were going to try, and it turned out pretty good. So I'll show you guys how we powder coated all the bumpers, grills, and everything that we had on this car that was chrome before.
So this is the chrome we're using here. It's Super Chrome Plus. We also have a clear coat, and it's a clear vision clear coat by Prismatic.
So our painter Angel here, he's just powder coating all the chrome pieces that were on the grill, and we're also going to do the headlight brackets and the bumpers and all the emblems that were on the car. So we've powder coated chrome before and it didn't really turn out too shiny, but this is some special stuff, so we want to see how this works and see if it turns out pretty good.
All right, we also got our grill pieces powder coated, so we're gonna throw those on. All right, so that's finally on there, and it looks pretty good for cheap powder coat versus actually chroming it. You can tell up close that it's not chrome, but if you stand like 2 feet back, you wouldn't even know. So it looks way better than what it did.
All right, with that chrome powder coat actually turning out pretty good, we're going to go ahead and final install all the coolers and headlights and everything that we had disassembled whenever we pulled off everything to wire it. So we can go ahead and put everything in and start the wiring process. So this is a big step. If you've ever built something like this before, you know wiring is going to be the most time consuming thing. So we want to get started on it as soon as we can. So now that we have all the lights and everything wired up in the grill, the way that we're going to control them is these switch panels, and they're a 6-button panel that you can control with a relay box, and it comes with all the relays and everything. So we're going to put those in the Jeep, just tucked away, probably up on the headliner somewhere. And that way when you want to turn the lights on, you can just hit a button and it'll click the relay, which is already wired into this box here, and then that'll turn all the lights on, or whatever lights that you want to tie to that specific relay. So that works pretty well. It's a really easy way to wire some lights or whatever kind of functions that you want to do. So we're going to wire this in that harness as well.
We can go ahead and finally install the entire harness for the rest of the vehicle. So we wanted to wait to put the body onto the frame over here because we wanted to wire everything up first. So we got a little bit of stuff to wire under the hood, and then we can mount the fuse box and start running the entire harness into the rest of the car, under the hood, and in the inside. All right, so here's our wiring harness. So this side is everything that mounts under the dash, like all the gauges and the fuse box and stuff. And then this side is everything that has to mount under the hood, like headlights and fans and everything like that. That's how long everything is, so it's pretty nice. They give you a lot of extra length, so that way you can kind of use it in a universal application.
Alright, so now that we got our harness kind of organized and laid out, we can go ahead and start running this into the engine bay. That way we can kind of mock up where everything is going to go, and we can plan out how we're going to run all the wires, because what makes a really good engine bay is, in my opinion, is being able to access things a lot easier, but also not having the wires just drooped everywhere. So we're going to spend some time trying to figure out where everything's going to go very neatly, so that way whenever we have an issue, we can easily solve that problem. So all we have to do now is run everything that goes to the back of the Jeep. Originally this ran in the headliner, but we decided to go and run it under the car into some wire loom. We figured that would be a little bit better, that way you don't have to pull the entire headliner down to be able to fix something. If something needs to be changed or wired, we can just go put it up on the lift and then fix it there. So we're running it under the car, and then we actually run it back up into the body. Then from in the body, it just wires straight to where our taillights go, our speakers, and everything else. So it works pretty well, and we figured this would be a lot more accessible way to do it. So now that we got everything run in the wiring harness, the only thing left is to mount the fuse box, and that should be it in the running of the wiring harness. So now the hard part begins, where we're going to have to actually plug all the wires in and make sure they're in the right spot, make sure everything functions, and that is what's going to take so much time. But I know wiring is not the most exciting video, so I hope that we can show you guys kind of how we did it, and maybe you guys can figure out how you're going to do something on your build. But I promise you we're going to have some exciting stuff coming up in the next few videos here, so you're going to want to stay tuned. So make sure you click that subscribe button so you can stay updated on all of our videos here on Rustomod. Thank you guys so much for watching. We just hit 6,000 subscribers, so thank you guys so much for subscribing. Make sure you go check out our patina party on August 13th. It's a patina car show. You'll see all of our builds there, and we're going to have some drag racing, welding competitions, vendors. It's going to be a great time, so you're not going to want to miss it. That's August 13th at Maryland International Raceway. But we'll see you then, and we'll see you guys on the next episode. Thanks for watching.